It is nighttime, and the temperature has dropped so low that the air itself seems to freeze, and the wind tears at your skin. Outside, a storm rages, capable of killing a person in a matter of minutes, turning the endless plains into an icy desert. But just a few inches away from this deadly cold, behind a thin wall of animal skins, a completely different, warm life flows. Here, inside the conical dwelling, a steady fire burns, and people sleep peacefully, without fear of being buried under the snow. It seems like an impossible paradox. How can a seemingly fragile structure, made of wooden poles and skins, withstand the power of an Arctic cyclone? This phenomenon of survival has baffled European researchers for centuries, who froze in their solid houses while the nomads felt comfortable in the middle of the open steppe. The secret lay not in the thickness of the walls, but in a deep understanding of the laws of physics and a unique organization of space. A tepee is not just a tent, it is a complex engineering system honed by thousands of years of harsh experience. Every detail here, from the angle of the poles to the arrangement of the sleeping places, is vitally important and leaves no room for error. The warmth in such a dwelling is the result not only of fire, but also of strict discipline, where each member of the family plays their invisible role. It was the combination of architectural genius and social structure that turned these tents into impregnable fortresses against winter. Watch the video to the end to learn how ancient ventilation technology, forgotten by modern architects, saved entire tribes from carbon monoxide poisoning and cold death. What if I told you that everything you believed about the primitiveness of nomadic dwellings is not true? Teepees are mistakenly considered simple tents that can be pitched any which way, but in fact they are aerodynamic tubes, tuned with millimeter precision. The cone shape was not chosen by chance or for aesthetic reasons, but as the only way to survive in the open spaces of the Great Plains. When the wind hits a vertical wall, it tends to knock it over, creating enormous pressure on the structure. The conical shape allows air currents to flow smoothly around the dwelling, pressing it to the ground instead of blowing it away. The stronger the wind blows, the more stable the structure becomes, as if digging into the ground with its base. But even the ideal cone was not symmetrical. The back wall of the tepee was always steeper, and the front wall was more gradual. This was done in order to most effectively withstand the prevailing westerly winds, which posed the greatest threat. The frame of the dwelling consisted of carefully selected pine trunks, which were polished to a shine so as not to damage the cover. These poles were placed in a specific order, intertwining at the top in a secure lock that could withstand the weight of not only heavy skins, but also snowcaps. The number of poles could vary from 15 to 20, and each had its own name and place in this complex puzzle. The cover was sewn from a multitude of bison hides, treated in such a way as to remain waterproof but still allow some light to pass through. The seams were glued and sewn with tendons, creating a watertight shell capable of withstanding heavy rain and wet snow. The whole structure weighed quite a bit, but could be assembled and disassembled by women in less than an hour. In winter, the cover was not stretched as tightly as in summer, leaving space for the materials to expand and contract naturally due to temperature changes. The lower edge of the cover was tightly secured with stones or turf to prevent any drafts at ground level. This created a thermos effect where the external environment was completely cut off from the interior space. Particular attention was paid to the orientation of the entrance, which always faced east towards the rising sun. This had not only a sacred meaning, but also a practical one. Winds rarely blew from the east, which allowed the door to be opened without the risk of cooling the dwelling. The morning dawn was the first to enter the house, awakening the inhabitants and bringing the first warmth of the new day. The door itself was a separate skin, often stretched over a willow frame, which fit snugly into an oval opening. Inside the tepee, The floor was always raised above ground level by layers of grass and skins, but we will talk about that later. It is important to understand that the tepee was a living organism that breathed and reacted to changes in the weather. We would love to hear your opinion. What do you think about the sophisticated aerodynamics of ancient dwellings? Write about it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new dives into history. Are you ready to learn the truth about how heat was actually retained in a thin tent? The main secret of the winter tepee, which is often forgotten in films and books, was the inner lining, or dew curtain. Without this element, it would have been almost impossible to survive in 40-degree frost, even with a fire. This canvas made of soft leather or fabric was stretched inside the dwelling, repeating the shape of a cone, but did not reach the very top. The height of this inner wall was usually about 1.5 to 2 meters, creating an enclosed space around the living area. There was an air gap between the outer hard cover and this soft lining. It was this layer of air that acted as a powerful insulator, preventing the cold from the outer walls from penetrating inside. The physics of this process was ingeniously simple. Cold air seeping under the outer shell did not enter the living area. Instead, it heated up and rose up this air corridor, rushing towards the smoke hole. This constant flow created a draft that pulled the smoke away from the hearth, preventing it from stagnating below. The dew curtain also protected the inhabitants from condensation, which inevitably formed on the cold outer walls. Moisture droplets ran down the outer skin without reaching people's sleeping areas and belongings. The interior always remained dry, which was critical for maintaining warmth and health. This inner wall was often decorated with paintings depicting the exploits of warriors or family history. It created a cozy atmosphere, blocking out the gloomy shadows and drafts that wandered along the outer perimeter. Supplies, tools, and household items were also stored behind this curtain, freeing up space by the fire. In winter, the space between the walls was often filled with dry grass or hay for additional insulation. This turned the lower part of the tepee into a real haystack, impervious to frost. Such a sandwich of leather, air, and grass was not inferior to modern building materials in terms of thermal insulation. Thanks to this system, the temperature at floor level, where people slept, was comfortable even on the coldest nights. Drafts that could have chilled the sleepers simply could not overcome this double barrier. Air entered the dwelling only from above, already partially warmed and purified. But how exactly did a fire lit directly on the ground not burn everything around it and provide so much heat? You will learn about this in the next chapter. Want to know a secret that will change your life and your understanding of heating? The hearth in a tepee was not just a fire, but a high-tech heating device that required precise adjustment. It was not located strictly in the center, but was slightly offset toward the door, which allowed for more efficient use of living space. A special shallow pit was dug for the hearth, the edges of which were lined with stones. These stones acted as heat accumulators, heating up from the fire and continuing to give off heat when the flames died down. During the day, they absorbed heat, and at night they became a source of soft infrared radiation that warmed the sleepers. Sometimes such stones were specially heated red hot on the outside and brought inside to quickly raise the temperature. The choice of firewood for a winter fire was a matter of life and death, which was approached with particular care. Coniferous species were rarely used, as they shot sparks that could burn through skins and clothing. Preference was given to hardwood deciduous trees, which burned evenly, hotly, and, most importantly, produced little smoke. Firewood was prepared in advance and stored inside the tepee, behind an inner curtain, so that it would always be dry. Wet wood not only burned poorly, but also filled the dwelling with acrid fumes and smoke that made the eyes water. The art of maintaining a fire was to keep it burning without flaring up, creating a stable column of warm air. To reflect heat into the room, special screens made of rawhide were sometimes used. They were placed behind the backs of those sitting, creating cozy areas where the temperature was significantly higher. The heat did not escape through the hole, but circulated inside the cone, reflecting repeatedly off the walls. The chimney, that is, the space above the fire, worked thanks to the pressure difference created by the shape of the teepee. The smoke rose strictly vertically, going into the opening, as if into a vacuum cleaner pipe. If the system was set up correctly, the inside of the dwelling smelled only of a light aroma of wood, not smoke. On the coldest nights, the fire was not extinguished for a minute, keeping it smoldering. A special person, usually a woman or an older member of the family, made sure that the coals did not go out. It was a watch that the lives of all the inhabitants of the house depended on. The ashes from the hearth were regularly removed, but not thrown away, but used for insulation or household needs. The cleanliness of the hearth was the key to good draft and efficient combustion. A fire clogged with ashes produced less heat and more smoke. If you think you know everything about how Native Americans slept, you are deeply mistaken. Like this post if you enjoy learning such details about everyday life, and we will continue. What if everything you were taught about equality in the tribe is outdated? The arrangement of sleepers in the teepee was dictated not only by tradition, but also by the harsh physics of heat distribution. The warmest and most honorable place was at the back of the dwelling, directly opposite the entrance, behind the hearth. This is where the head of the family, the owner of the teepee, slept, and where honored guests were received.
Welcome, relatives. Please sit close to the fire. We are honored by your presence.
Thank you, Elder. The warmth is much appreciated.
This place was as far as possible from the door, through which cold air could enter and exit. The walls here were double, and the floor was often additionally insulated with the skins of the thickest winter animals. Sacred objects and weapons that required dryness and warmth were stored here. On either side of the head of the family were places for other men and women, according to their status and age. The elderly, who needed more warmth for their aching joints, slept closer to the fire and further from the entrance. Their comfort was a priority, as they were the keepers of the tribe's wisdom and traditions. Children usually slept between adults, warmed by the heat of their parents' bodies on both sides. This created natural batteries of living heat, ensuring that no one froze alone. Small children were wrapped in special fur bags resembling cocoons, from which they could not escape at night. Closest to the exit were places for young unmarried men or distant relatives. This was an area where the temperature was slightly lower and where air movement was more frequent. However, for young and hardened warriors, this was considered normal and part of their training. People slept with their feet toward the fire, forming a kind of star or wheel around the central hearth. This position allowed them to quickly warm their limbs, which froze first and be ready to jump up at any moment. In addition, it saved space, allowing a large family to be accommodated in one teepee. The beds were complex, multi-layered structures, not just skins thrown on the ground. First, willow rods were laid on the ground, creating a springy and airy base. Thick mats of dry grass were placed on top, and only then several layers of bison skins with thick winter fur. Such a bed raised the sleeper several dozen centimeters above the cold ground. The layer of air in the rods and grass acted as a heat insulator, preventing the cold from the frozen soil from penetrating. On top, people covered themselves with heavy fur blankets, often sewn from several skins. The order of placement was unshakable, and everyone knew their place even in complete darkness. This eliminated fuss and chaos, allowing the family to act as a single organism. And how exactly were the lungs of this organism controlled? The smoke valves. The answer awaits you in the next chapter. Ventilation in a teepee was not a passive process, but an active task that required the constant participation of the inhabitants. The main tools for controlling the air were two smoke vents located at the top of the cone. These ears of the teepee were attached to separate movable poles that stood outside the dwelling. The position of these flaps changed depending on the direction and strength of the wind. If the wind blew from the north, the flaps were turned to close the opening on the windward side and open it on the leeward side. This created a vacuum above the opening, which literally sucked the smoke out from inside. The poles were controlled from the ground, And this was the responsibility of whoever was on duty or went outside. An experienced teepee dweller could determine how to turn the valves by the sound of the wind, without even looking at them. An error in adjustment could cause the wind to blow smoke back into the dwelling, making it unbearable to stay there. In calm weather, both valves were open wide to provide maximum draft and fresh airflow. During snowfall or rain, they were brought together, leaving only a narrow gap for smoke to escape, protecting the fire from precipitation. This flexibility in design allowed the structure to adapt to any whims of nature. Lower ventilation was provided through a gap between the ground and the outer cover, but this air first passed behind the inner curtain. There it heated up and rose, creating a thermal curtain along the walls. Thus, no direct icy airflow entered the living area. In severe frosts, the lower edge of the teepee was often covered with snow from the outside, completely blocking the flow of air from below. In such cases, a special pipe made of a hollow log or leather was used to feed the fire, connected to the hearth. This allowed the fire to burn brightly without burning up the oxygen needed by people. The smoke hole also served as a window through which light penetrated during the day, and stars could be seen at night. This created a sense of connection with the outside world, even when it was dangerous to go outside. The light falling from above created a special atmosphere inside the cone. Adjusting the valves was the first thing in the morning and the last thing before bed. If the wind changed during the night, someone would wake up and go outside to adjust the position of the poles. This became such a habit that it was done almost automatically. The skill of smoke control was passed down from generation to generation as a vital skill. From an early age, children were taught to watch the wind and understand the language of fire.
The wind comes from the west today, so...
Are you ready for the shocking truth that cold can be defeated by cold? Snow, which for many was a symbol of death and freezing, was turned by the Indians into a powerful insulator. When deep snow fell, it was not simply cleared away, but used to insulate the outside of the dwelling. They built a high snow wall around the base of the teepee, which could reach a meter in height. This snow barrier pressed the lower edge of the roof tightly to the ground, eliminating any gaps. Snow, which consists mostly of air, retained heat perfectly, preventing the ground under the tepee from freezing at the edges. Inside such a snow ring, the temperature was significantly higher than in the open air. Sometimes snow blocks were used to build windbreaks at some distance from the entrance. Such a wall broke the gusts of wind, creating a calm zone in front of the door. This allowed people to enter and exit without letting in whirlwinds of snow dust. In particularly harsh regions, it was common practice to create snow corridors or tunnels leading to the entrance. This resembled igloo architecture and served as an additional airlock to preserve heat. Passing through such a corridor, people would shake off the snow so as not to bring moisture into the house. Snow was also used to store frozen foods such as meat and fat. They were buried in snow drifts on the shady side of the teepee, where they were safely protected from predators and thaws. It was a natural refrigerator, available around the clock. However, one had to be careful with the snow. If it melted from the warmth of the walls, the skins could get wet. Therefore, a layer of branches or dry grass was often laid between the snow and the skins. This created drainage and ventilation, keeping the cover dry. But how were responsibilities distributed during the long winter nights? Who guarded the sleep of the others? The answer to this question is in the next chapter. Night in a winter camp was never a time of complete rest for everyone at once. There was an unspoken schedule of duties to ensure safety and warmth for the whole family. Usually, this role was taken on by women or older family members who slept lightly and woke up at the slightest change in the environment. The main task of the night watch was to keep the fire at the right level. The flames could not be allowed to burn too brightly and throw sparks onto the sleepers, nor could they be allowed to go out completely. Wood was added quietly, almost silently, so as not to disturb the sleep of the others. The guard also listened for sounds from outside, as winter was a time of hungry predators. The howling of wolves or the crackling of branches could be a sign of danger requiring an immediate response. Weapons were always kept ready, at the entrance, or at the head of the family. If a blizzard began, the person on duty had to go out and check the fastenings of the poles and valves. Snow accumulating on the cover could weigh down the skin, so it had to be shaken off periodically. This was done by striking it with a long pole from the inside or outside. Caring for small children and the elderly also fell on the shoulders of those who stayed awake. Straightening a rumpled blanket, giving water, or warming frozen hands. All this was done with care and love. The warmth of human relationships was no less important than the warmth of the hearth. Sometimes the night hours were used for quiet work, mending clothes, beadwork, or preparing tools. In the dim light of the coals, the hands of the craftswomen worked wonders, not wasting a moment. This created a sense of continuity and comfort. The changing of the guard took place naturally without loud commands or wake-up calls. One person fell asleep, another woke up, as if feeling the need to change posts. This rhythm was developed over years of living together in a confined space. In the next chapter, we will talk about how bedding turned into real-life support systems. The bedding of indigenous peoples was not just blankets, but complex engineering structures. The basis of everything was a bison hide, a robe tanned in a special way, preserving the thick winter fur. Such hides were heavy but incredibly warm, creating an impenetrable barrier to the cold. Winter bison fur has a unique structure. It consists of stiff guard hairs and a thick, soft undercoat. This undercoat traps a huge amount of air, which when heated by the body does not escape. In effect, people slept in their own thermal capsules. They didn't use single skins for sleeping, but big pieces of fur sewn together. You could cover yourself with them, creating a shared cocoon for several people. The more people slept under one cover, the warmer it was for everyone. Soft deer or moose skins were often placed under the skins, which were more comfortable against the body. The fur was always turned inward, toward the person's body, and the leather side was turned outward. This protected the fur from dirt and created an additional windproof layer. Pillows were made from spare clothing or special leather bags filled with fur, grass, or bird down. They were hard but reliably insulated the head from the cold coming from the ground. The head always had to be kept warm. This was an iron rule. During the day, the beds were folded up and placed against the walls, serving as backrests for sitting. This freed up space in the center of the tepee and kept the beds dry and clean. In the evening, unfolding the beds was a whole ritual of preparation for sleep. The skins of old bulls, which were the thickest and heaviest, were especially prized. They were laid down as mattresses to insulate against the cold of the ground. The skins of females, which were lighter and softer, were preferred for covering. Morning in a winter tepee did not come with the sunrise, but with the first sounds of the camp coming to life. Despite the frost outside, life inside was quick and energetic. The first thing to be renewed was the fire, which had turned into a pile of smoldering coals overnight. The women began to prepare food, melting snow or ice in pots to obtain water. Hot broth or herbal tea was necessary to warm the body from the inside before going out into the cold. Food in winter was fattier and more caloric to provide the body with energy for heating. The men checked their equipment, weapons, and the condition of the horses if they were sheltered nearby. Horses were often covered with blankets made of skins or herded into protected pens made of branches. Caring for animals was as important as caring for people. When the children woke up, they did not immediately run out from under the warm skins, waiting for the air in the tepee to warm up. This was a time for stories, instruction, and plans for the day. The morning hours were filled with communication and strengthening family ties. Going outside required serious preparation. Clothes were put on in layers, and ties and fastenings were checked. No part of the body should remain exposed except the eyes. The frost did not forgive carelessness in clothing. If the storm continued, life centered inside the tepee. People engaged in crafts, repairs, games, and learning. The tepee became a workshop, school, and club all at once. Despite the cramped conditions, conflicts were rare thanks to strict rules of conduct. Everyone respected each other's personal space, trying not to interfere and to be helpful. It was a high culture of communal living, developed over centuries. Unlike the rectangular houses of Europeans, the tepee had no dark and cold corners. The round shape of the dwelling symbolized the cyclical nature of life, the unity of the family and the world. In a circle, everyone is equal. Everyone can see each other, and the heat is distributed evenly without getting stuck in dead ends. This shape allowed for the most efficient use of space and the energy of fire. The heat rose and swirled along the walls, creating natural convection. In a rectangular house, heat often accumulates under the ceiling, leaving the corners cold. A comparison of the tepee with the longhouses of the Iroquois reveals different survival strategies. Longhouses relied on massiveness and the collective warmth of many families, but were static. The tepee, on the other hand, was mobile and adaptable to the wind. A winter tepee is not just a shelter, it is a model of the universe for its inhabitants. The floor is the earth, the walls are the sky, and the poles are the paths connecting the worlds. The fire in the center is the sun, giving life. Modern winter tents often borrow the principles of the tepee: conical shape, central support, ventilation from above, but they rarely achieve the level of microclimate that was created by natural, breathable materials. Skins and wood created a healthy atmosphere, unlike synthetics. The ability to survive in a tepee required not only technology, but also a special state of mind. Calmness, patience, and attentiveness were the main virtues. Panic or fuss could lead to mistakes that cost lives. The history of survival in the tepee teaches us that comfort does not always depend on the complexity of technology. Sometimes simple, time-tested solutions prove to be the most reliable. Harmony with nature gives you a better chance than fighting it. We have seen that survival in a tepee is a complex art that combines engineering calculations, knowledge of nature, and the power of family traditions. It is not a primitive way of life, but a highly organized system where every detail serves to preserve life. From the angle of the poles to the laying of the skins, everything had a deep meaning. Which detail of the tepee's design impressed you the most? The double walls with an air gap or the use of snow as insulation? Share your opinion in the comments because your thoughts help us better understand history, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episodes about the lives of indigenous peoples.